Hi everyone, welcome back to Lettuce Leaf. Today we are doing another speed build and it's been a moment. I do get my switch back tomorrow though, finally, so look forward to more speed builds because I am going to be back on Domino, able to do whatever I want again with a fixed switch. So this build, as you may know, I have a jungle core island and this is for Pietro's house. Now if you ask literally anyone, they will tell you Pietro is not jungle core, but I don't theme my villagers to my island. I will do here and there if I have a space and I'm like, cool, I could get us themed on there. But for the most part, I don't. I choose villagers based on the ones that I like. And I don't have it in me to get rid of them, just for a theme that I'm not going to stick with forever. So thinking on this and how to incorporate Pietro into a jungle core island, he is very vibrant coloured. So he's this bright blue, red, green, pink sheep. And I went off like toucans and poison dart frogs and other animals and creatures that are brightly coloured. And I was like, okay, so they do have a place in the jungle. So what I'll do is I'll make him a rare creature. So he's hidden away and you wouldn't necessarily just stumble upon him. You would have to go looking if you wanted to find him. So based on that, I've done his house hidden, tucked away behind the town hall resident services area. So I already had this pathway here with these two cliffs there because I was planning on doing something similar, but I wasn't sure how I wanted to do it. I just knew I wanted to have some sort of secret pathway back here. But if anything, this became a bit of a hindrance, and I kind of wish I'd just flattened it all and gone from there, rather than starting with a partly built area. As you can see, and I'll skip through most of this. The first part was just getting rid of things to reshape the cliffs, reshape that path. But because I already had this set out path that I'd already done, I tend to try and stick to it rather than just carve out a new one, which eventually I do just carve out a new path and make it work that way, rather than try and make the cliffs fit the path, when the path really didn't have to stay as it was. I had this stream of water running behind as well from the river, which I also had to get rid of to make sure that I had enough cliffs built out, because I wanted these 2 layers, but still with trees. And you have to have so much room for trees, but a lot of the start of this build is just reshaping the cliffs, getting rid of the water, getting rid of the items on the cliffs as they are. So although there's quite a few jump cuts where it seems like I've done loads, all I'm doing is clearing and slightly reshaping. When I'm building cliffs, I don't like having them look unnaturally shaped. Like when they have these right angles or these big like rectangular stuck out bits or whatever, I'd rather have them more natural looking. So I'll build up certain areas on the side to just sort of bulk it out a bit so it doesn't look as like man-made. When you are trying to make a more built up area, especially like ones that I'm doing with like a jungle canopy, I find that the palm trees are like such a good item to use because their leaves splay out so much more than the cedar trees and the bamboo especially, but also I find them, I don't know if they are wider than the hardwood trees, but the style of leaves, I like the way they look higher up more than the hardwood ones. What you might have noticed so far is that I didn't have a pile of items on the floor as I usually do, so don't worry. I've gone to my house, grabbed a whole load of stuff, and thrown it on the floor, as is tradition. Now that I've gone and grabbed my post box, I can just throw this on the floor near the build, and every now and then grab out the items that I need. So what I'm using at the moment is these floating blocks. Now when I recorded this, the Mario items had just dropped, and we were starting to see these really, really cool man-made bridges that people had done with the floating blocks, like fake bridges. One mistake I made, which I will warn you of now, is that you need to put your custom patterns down beneath these before you place them, because although you can run underneath them, they do still count as a placed item as though it is on the floor. So I had to then take everything down to put my custom pattern down, which was really tedious when I'd already worked out how I wanted everything to look. But yeah, word of warning. So how you do these fake bridges is I've got 4 of these floating blocks and 4 of the blocks that go on the ground. And I have placed these floating blocks in the middle of the path and put on the items that I want to put on them. You can use, I think it's most items, if not all items, from the accessories portion of your storage. There was a lot of messing with this, getting things the right angle that I wanted them, getting things to land on the right blocks. But once you get into the swing of it, you'll notice that it does come a bit easier. As per all of my builds, of course, I have to have bug models absolutely everywhere. So I've got a little bumblebee up on here with the flowers. I then just climbed up onto the cliff, decorated a little bit here and there before I blocked myself off from them areas, grabbed out the next blocks and built the edges of the bridge, so like the step up, I suppose. And then I did exactly the same thing, but for these, putting the items on was a lot easier because you can spin these around, it's just in front of you. At this point, you can see that the blocks on the right are slightly further back than the blocks on the left. Now, obviously for me making a fake bridge, this was not the look I was going for, but it shows you how you can mess with perspective using these. Like, they're only slightly further back, but it gives it more of like a staircase look than a bridge look, so you can really mess with that to get different perspectives and get different looking builds depending on what you're going for. Also, I didn't realise just how large these blocks were until I was like placing one down and stood next to it, and it was like as big as our character. I was like, okay, I didn't think these were that big. This part is just a lot of putting items down, seeing how it looks, seeing if it matches the other items, seeing if it all plays well together. And like, it's just a lot of that. Like, I must have spent like 15 minutes trying to think of the way that I wanted this to look, and if I liked how the items were, how I'd place them. This is where I realised that I couldn't put custom patterns down here, so I then had to take it apart a bit and then put my patterns down. I did consider putting down some of the mud path, or it's the dirt path, isn't it? The dirt or the light dirt, but it would then show up on the map, and does that then defeat the purpose of it being like a secret area if you can just get out a map and it basically leads you to it? I understand the hypocrisy of that statement when I'm making a video on a secret area. Of course, as per all of my builds, I had to get my flamingo in there. I think I end up putting a couple in there because they go everywhere. I feel like so much of designing is tweaking things here and there to get it to how you want it to look. Like, I've just reshaped this cliff a bit slightly, pushed this tree back, and then I can like put down the pile of leaves and more plants and make it more overgrown. These like edge bits of a cliff I'm never too bothered with. I usually just chuck like an item or two and then just put flowers down. But here we have the actual bridge leading towards Pietro's house. We haven't actually decorated his area yet, but I wanted to make sure that I had the walkway there first, because then I feel like it's easier to have it flow, rather than if I put his house down, decorate all around that, and then tried to squish in a walkway. I also just wanted to check that the trees that I had around helped it to blend in and just look like there was trees back there. It doesn't bother me that you can slightly see some of the bricks, especially as you get closer to the town hall, because then it kind of adds to the intrigue of, ooh, what could be back there. And then I've gone to grab Pietro's house. Again, this is me placing it, having a look, placing it, having a look, placing it, having a look, like 800 times. One thing that you can do if you either don't want to have the housing kit in your pockets, or you just want to plan ahead without having to actually place the house there, is to mark out a 4x4 area or a 4x3. The actual house will be 4x3, but you won't be able to place anything obviously like on the steps of the house. So 3x4 or 4x4 works. You can either do this with like random custom patterns or with weeds is another popular way. So after like 10 minutes of me messing with the house, I finally got it to where I wanted it to be and started decorating around it. So I've got more plants and stuff in my pockets. I put that yucca there because most of the time you can't see the pot, so I like putting yuccas behind cliffs where it does block off that bit, because then it looks like another outdoor plant. This blossom viewing lantern suits Pietro's house so much. If it's one that you don't have, it's a DIY from cherry blossom season, which is right around the corner once again. This is definitely one that you should look out for because it is a very good DIY. In my humble opinion, anyway. As you'll have seen on my other builds, I love these patches of the path that I have, this jungle path. So I have just done a random little splodge. I wish I showed up on the map, because all the random splodges I have would be really interesting to look at on my map. One of the things that I cut out of these videos that I do like 80 times a build is run to my flower fields and grab out what I need. They're not like decoration as a flower field. I just separated out all my flowers so I know like which breed and which colour of the breed is where, and I can just go and grab them. Obviously the next step was to make sure that his house was hidden from the back side of it, because we have the town hall blocking the front of it, but it's not exactly hidden if it's not hidden from all sides, is it? Those of you who have watched the research lab video that I posted a while back, that is what we're connecting up to now. So a lot of this at the moment is the mush items with bug models on, because they're the best items. I absolutely love all the mush items, and I can't wait till I can go and get more mushrooms because I am severely running out. It's mainly the mush lamps, the mush log, and the mush partitions. But they all use the same mushroom type, so I went through them so quickly. Once I'd marked out a little bit of a path using the items, I then built up this small area of cliff to hide this corner of his house and some of the back of it. And here you can see from this bird's eye view the gap that I'm leaving where the research lab connects up, so you can still get through that little windy path. Of course, I had to make sure that this cliff was big enough to at least have some trees, because otherwise you'd still see his house because it's bigger than one cliff. As I mentioned before, I really like the palm trees, so that's the one I went for in this space here. Then with some red flowers and the red camellia bush, it really ties it together and it keeps it vibrant, which I think is a very key aspect to have in Pietro's build. I didn't want it to be all muted colours, I wanted it to stay quite bright. So I've got the brighter flowers, I've got some of the pinks and blues which match his house. The bug models I've used are like the honeybee, which is a very vibrant yellow, the Raja Brook, which has that lime green on it. Now that I have my cherry tree, I can decorate around that too and just link this little bit up to one another. So what I then did was wrapped up, skipped to the next day to give you the full walkthrough of the area that we'd created. However, although his house was there, I wasn't done yet. I wanted to make sure that this bit was still linked up to the research lab properly. I didn't want to just leave this weird patch of empty grass. I wanted to make sure that it was all fully decorated so it wasn't an area that I'd forget about if I wasn't using this way to walk through every day or so. So to begin with, it's just a lot of trees, mini trees, and floral custom patterns and flowers to keep it fitting the jungle theme. I also have weeds everywhere because weeds are like my favourite way to decorate. They just make it come to life a bit. Like, even if you don't particularly like weeds and want to keep them at the lowest stage, it still gives your grass a bit more texture. I liked the idea of this broken plank pattern back up to the research lab as well, because we do have some of that as you go into the research area. So it linked it all up quite well. I use a lot of the houseplants outdoors, like the cacao plant, like the monstera, like the yucca, because they don't take up too much space and they do make it look a bit more alive, a bit more dynamic. You can see the boy himself lurking in his new house area. Of course, as you notice, this back area isn't very hidden on this side, so that was the mission now that his house was built in. I did want to make sure that these trees were as close together as possible to keep it dense. So I moved back that cedar tree so that the orange tree could go there as well and just bulk it up a little bit. On this block, I really wanted to have something tall so that I could have something overhanging his house, but there just wasn't anything that I could actually put on there, so I just put one of the little plants on there, pulled it out a bit so you can see it from certain angles. These bits of cliff that I missed, as I said previously, these bits at the side, I just throw down plants. Now we're back in this little pathway between his house and the research lab and the museum and stuff. I just wanted to make sure I was happy with how this looked, that I had enough weeds and items thrown about. I also really like this green leaf pile because it makes it look like people haven't walked through here as much, and that's why the leaves are all built up, adding to the mysterious what could be lurking in the back here vibe. I'm going to wrap up the construction tool use here, as Tanguy sings there's a lovely little song. And this is the final look. That is everything from me today. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed, make sure to leave a like, it does help the channel out a lot. And comment down below what you thought of this, if there's anything you would have changed, if there's things that you enjoyed about this build. Subscribe if you're new and want to see more from me. We upload quite frequently. I've also been streaming over on twitch.tv/thelettuceleaf. All that's in the description down below. I will see you in the next one. Bye!